You've read the articles. Maybe you've watched the videos, bought the book, or followed the advice of someone who seemed to genuinely have it figured out. Save 20% of your income. Cut the coffee. Invest early. Don't buy things you don't need. And you nodded along. You really did. Because it made sense. On paper, it made perfect sense. But then Monday arrived. And the week happened. And something came up €1. It always comes up €1. And by the time you checked in with yourself, none of it had actually changed. And the worst part? The part nobody talks about? You didn't feel lazy or stupid. You felt defeated. Like the advice worked for everyone except you. Like there's some invisible gap between knowing what to do and actually being able to do it. That gap is what this video is about. Here's the thing most financial content gets completely wrong. It treats financial behavior like a knowledge problem. Like if you just learned the right information €1, the right strategy, the right percentage, the right order of operations €1, you would naturally start doing it. But you already know. Most of you watching this already know the basics. Spend less than you earn. Have an emergency fund. Don't carry credit card debt. Invest consistently over time. That's it. That's the whole game, really. So why isn't it working? Because financial advice is almost always written for someone whose life is stable, someone with predictable income, low emotional stress, a supportive environment, and enough margin €1, financial and psychological €1, to make measured, rational decisions. And that is genuinely not most people's lives. Most people are making financial decisions at the end of a long day when they're tired. They're making decisions when they're stressed about a relationship, or worried about a parent, or quietly anxious about a job that never quite feels secure. They're making decisions with the phone full of comparisons €1. Other people's vacations, other people's homes, other people's versions of a life that looks so effortless from the outside. And into all of that, we drop a piece of advice that says, just follow these 5 steps. It's not that the advice is wrong. It's that the advice was written for a completely different human in a completely different life. Let me give you a real example. Not a hypothetical, not a case study, just something recognizable. Imagine someone who's been trying to save money for 2 years. They know they should. They've set up the automatic transfer twice, and twice they've had to cancel it because something came up €1, a car repair, a medical bill, a month where work slowed down. And each time, there's this quiet shame that builds up. This feeling of, I keep trying and it keeps not working. And maybe I'm just bad with money. But here's what nobody asked. What's actually going on in their life when they're spending? What emotional state are they in? What are they actually buying and why? Because for a lot of people €1, and I mean a lot €1, spending isn't about the thing they're buying. It's about relief. It's about control. When everything else feels uncertain, making a small purchase is one of the few moments in the day where something feels like a choice you made, where something went the way you wanted it to. Behavioral economists have a name for this. It sits inside a broader concept called present bias €1. This deeply human tendency to prioritize how we feel right now over how we'll feel in the future. And the stronger the stress, the stronger the pull toward immediate relief. This isn't weakness. This is wiring. This is what happens when a nervous system is under chronic pressure, and the brain is constantly negotiating between what's safe right now and what's smart long-term. The logical, future-thinking part of your brain doesn't win every time. It's not supposed to. It was never designed to. And financial advice almost never accounts for this. It assumes you're operating from a place of calm, with full access to your rational mind. But money decisions almost never happen in a calm room. They happen in the checkout line when you're already late. They happen at dinner when someone suggests a trip and you don't want to be the one who says no again. They happen in the quiet of 2 a.m. when you're lying awake wondering if you're behind. There's also something else going on that doesn't get talked about enough, which is the social cost of following certain advice. A lot of traditional financial advice implicitly assumes that the people around you have similar goals, that your family, your friends, your partner are all aligned with your new financial priorities. But what happens when you're the first person in your family trying to save seriously? When saying no to the group dinner feels like rejection? When your parents interpret your budget as a sign you're struggling? Or your friends think you've become boring? The psychological cost of going against your social environment is enormous. Humans are wired for belonging, and when following the right financial advice puts you at odds with the people who matter most to you, many people will, understandably, choose the people, not because they don't care about money, because they care about something more. And no article, no YouTube channel, no personal finance bestseller is going to solve that tension for you. They'll just tell you to stay the course. There's also a simpler, more mechanical problem. A lot of financial advice is built around numbers that don't reflect real life. Save 20% of your income sounds clean. But if you're earning a modest salary and paying rent in a city and supporting a family member and trying to eat food that doesn't make you sick, 20% isn't a goal. It's a fantasy. And being told to pursue a fantasy repeatedly doesn't motivate you. It demoralizes you. The research on this is actually pretty clear. When a goal feels genuinely out of reach, people don't try harder. They disengage. They stop thinking about it because thinking about it hurts. And then they get called undisciplined or told they lack financial literacy, when really they were just given the wrong map for the terrain they're walking. So here's the shift I want to offer. And I want to be careful here, because I'm not trying to give you an excuse to do nothing. I'm trying to give you something more useful than motivation €, which is context. The reason most financial advice fails isn't because you failed. It's because the advice was designed around an idealized version of you €, one with stable income, low stress, no competing priorities, and a social environment that supports the journey. And most people don't live there. Which means the question isn't, why can't I follow this advice? The question is, what version of this advice actually fits my real life? Right now, as it actually is? This is a completely different starting point, and it changes everything. Because instead of trying to become a different person who lives a different life, you start working with the person you already are. You stop trying to build a financial system for someone who wakes up at 5 a.m. feeling energized and has no emotional complexity. You start building one for someone who's tired by Thursday, who cares about people, who has history, who sometimes spends money because it's the only thing that felt good that day. And that system €, the messy, imperfect, real-life version €, is the one that actually lasts. The first thing worth doing is getting honest about where you actually are. Not where you think you should be. Not in a self-critical way. Just factually. What does your spending actually look like? Not what you tell yourself it looks like €. What do the numbers say? And not to judge it. Just to see it clearly. Because you can't navigate from a location you're pretending you're not in. The second thing is to shrink the ask dramatically. If saving 20% isn't realistic. Right now, what is? Maybe it's 3%. Maybe it's $50. A month that goes somewhere it can't easily come back from. The amount matters less than the habit. And the habit matters less than the proof €. Proof to yourself that you can do something consistently, even if it's small. There's a concept in psychology called self-efficacy, which is basically your belief in your own ability to follow through. And that belief doesn't come from telling yourself you can do it. It comes from actually doing something, even something tiny, and experiencing that you did it. That experience compounds. Slowly, but it does. The third thing €, and this might be the most overlooked €, is to look at the emotional patterns around your money, not just the financial ones. When are you spending in a way that doesn't match your values? What's usually happening in your life in those moments? Because if you can identify the emotional trigger, you can start to build a small pause between the feeling and the action. Not a wall, just a moment. Enough space to ask, is this what I actually want right now? Or is this just what feels okay in this moment? You don't have to get this right every time. You don't have to be perfect. You just need a slightly higher percentage of moments where you caught yourself. And finally, €, try to find even one person in your life who can talk about money without it becoming a performance. A friend, a partner, a community online. Because the isolation of financial stress is genuinely one of its worst features. And the simple act of saying this out loud, of having someone else say, yeah, me too, does something that no spreadsheet can replicate. I want to end with something that I think gets lost in almost every financial conversation. The goal isn't to be rich. The goal €, for most of us, underneath all the noise a euro is to feel less scared, to have a little more breathing room, to not lie awake doing the same mental math at 2 a.m., to feel like you have some control over where your life is going. And that goal is completely reasonable. It's human, and it's achievable. Not through some perfect system, not by becoming a different version of yourself who doesn't feel stress and never makes emotional decisions, but by gradually, patiently, building something that works for the actual you, a euro, the one who's tired sometimes, who loves people who don't always share your priorities, who has a history, who is doing more than most people can see. The advice that failed you wasn't wrong because it was bad advice. It failed because it didn't know you. And now you know something it didn't, that your circumstances matter, your psychology matters, your relationships matter. And none of those are obstacles to good financial habits. They're the context inside which those habits have to actually live. So you don't need to overhaul your life. You don't need a new you. You just need a plan that fits the one you have. Progress beats perfection. It always does. And you're already further along than you think.